The trial was delayed because by law, Missouri law at that time was that a child under 10 could not testify in a trial, even if the trial was about something that happened to them. So it was delayed until I turned 10, which was in the summer. And then after my birthday in July or whatever, the trial began. School was in, so it was like in September. And the trial began, and I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember that I didn't like the prosecutor because of one thing that he did. And during the trial, he made me get out of the witness stand and walk over to that guy. And he said, like, is that person in here? And I was like, yes. And he was like, where is the person? I was like, there. And then he was like, no, I need you to get closer and show me where he is. So I remember looking at the judge, and my parents weren't in there, and I looked at the judge like, help, but I remember pulling the little door open and walking down the stand, trembling. I thought I peed my pants, but I guess I didn't. But my memory is that I peed my pants. And he made me point at the guy, and he's like, that's not close enough. Go towards the person. And so I remember looking at the jurors, like I was just looking for help from anyone. And I got close to him, and I pointed, and he was like maybe a foot away from my finger. But I remember trembling and shaking, and I went back to the witness stand, and I was just a wet noodle. I wasn't crying at that point, but I don't remember anything. It was like another moment where I just like separated. I wasn't on the stand, but I wasn't there. And so I just never liked the prosecutor. I always thought that that was the defender that did that. But when I got the records, I read it was the prosecutor. And I was like, this person is on my behalf. But when I got to the closing argument, I understood why he did it. This is a closing argument of the district attorney. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have the opportunity, if you want to see this, to take it to your deliberation room with you, and you can see what it says. Rectal blood noted on the swabs. What is rectal blood? It is the blood from the rectum. It is the blood on the swabs taken during the examination of Anthony Rogers. And if I misstate the evidence, don't hold that against Anthony Rogers, because it is your job to remember what the evidence is. What I say is not evidence. What Mr. Burke says is not evidence. He was the defender. But it is intended to help you in your deliberation. The things that I say now and the things he says when he gets up here are things you should be thinking about in your deliberation. What else am I required to prove? That Anthony Rogers was less than 14 years old? That's clear from the evidence. There's no dispute as to that. On the date this happened, he was 9 years old. He told you that his birthday was on July the 27th, 1980. He just turned 10 years old a few months ago. Now, in every criminal case, two things must be shown. Was there a crime committed? And we have proved that this is the case. I promise you in my opening statement that I will prove that a crime was committed in this case. And I have beyond a reasonable doubt. And the second thing is, who committed that crime? Anthony Rogers, you heard his testimony, and he tells you that it was the defendant who committed this crime. How does he remember that? Ladies and gentlemen, when someone is violating your person, when someone is forcibly having sodomy with you, you are not soon to forget that person's face. When someone is violating your very life and your personality and your privacy by invading your body, you're not soon to forget that person's face. Anthony Rogers didn't forget that person's face. Look at the evidence, the police officers and Anthony Rogers. Anthony Rogers on the 22nd of January, 4 days after he was attacked and molested and sexually assaulted by this man, looked at some photographs, numerous photographs. Did he pick out anyone from these photographs? No. Why? The man that did that to him on the 18th was not in those photographs. What else did he do later on that day on the 22nd? He looked at a lineup. Did he pick out anyone from that lineup? No, because the man who sexually molested him and sexually assaulted him was not in the lineup. On the 23rd, he looked at it yet another lineup at the police station. And did he pick out anyone from that lineup, ladies and gentlemen? No. Because the man that sexually molested him, the man that grabbed him from in front of Nelson's food shop and took him to Lafayette Park and forced his penis into his rectum was not in that lineup. Then what did he do? He looked at numerous other photographs in the office of the sex crime section. Did he pick out any photographs in there? No, ladies and gentlemen. Because that man that did this to him was not in any of those photographs. And you heard the testimony of the police officers regarding the conducting of the lineup, and you know beyond a reasonable doubt that those lineups were conducted. You know beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't pick anybody out of those lineups, and you know beyond a reasonable doubt that the reason he didn't pick anybody out of those lineups is because the man that did this thing to him was not in those lineups. Then what happens? February the 29th, approximately 5 or 6 weeks after he had been sexually assaulted in Lafayette Park, he goes down to the police station, he looks at a lineup with these 4 men in it, one of which was the defendant, and who does he pick out immediately and without hesitation? The man sitting right there. What about his description to the police? Mr. Burke made a big thing about that on cross-examination, and you heard the testimony about his description. And he was consistent right down to the line, ladies and gentlemen, from the time he talked with police, from the time he picked out this man. If he was mistaken, if he wasn't sure, if he hadn't shown you beyond a reasonable doubt that this is the man who did this to him, why didn't he pick out number one? You will be able to take this with you, too, to look at. Number one, you will see that he picks the general description that he gave the police officers. He has hair on his lip, hair on the chin. If you look closely, you can see a stubbly beard. Why didn't he pick out number one, ladies and gentlemen? Because number one is not the man who sexually assaulted him. Blah, 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 blah. It goes through all the guys. You saw Anthony Rogers walk into this courtroom and walk along the platform and give his name to the clerk. You saw him get up on the stand. You saw him raise his hand and swear to tell the truth. And if you recall on direct examination or redirect, I asked him, I said, Anthony, is the man who sexually assaulted you, is that man, do you see him in the courtroom today? He said yes. And I said, Anthony, will you come down from the witness stand and show us where he is? And if you recall, when he came down, he stood right here. And you remember what he looked like. He was a scared young man, a frightened young man. And then there's an objection from the public defendant. And he says, Your Honor, I will object and request the jury to be instructed to draw upon their recollection as to what he looked like and not Mr. Autry. Overruled. And he pointed over in that direction. And I said to him, Anthony, would you walk over closer and show us where the man is so that there is no question that you are pointing and picking out the right person? You saw Anthony, and as he got this close, ladies and gentlemen, approximately, he pointed right there to this man, the defendant. And I said, Anthony, is this the person is the person you're pointing to the person sitting next to Mr. Burke? And he said, yes. And you remember the look on his face, ladies and gentlemen, when he turned around and went back to the witness stand, what you saw in this courtroom yesterday when that little 10-year-old boy identified this child molester in the courtroom, he was frightened and a scared young man who was reliving in his own mind an experience of the night on January the 18th. What you saw was a frightened young man who was scared to death of having to confront this child rapist in the courtroom in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, if this man is not convicted because we have proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt, then there is no justice. You all took an oath and you said you will follow the evidence. You said you will follow the law. You said that if the state proved that Randy Grady was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you would convict. And then that's it.